Hey, everybody, this is Nathan Art with Ministry Solutions and Executive Leadership Solutions. Very excited about the conversation today. So many of you guys have been asking about what does it look like to have activated spaces in a church during the week. And candidly, a lot of us are very early into this conversation. And so today we have the opportunity to be with Dave Dummett, lead pastor at Willow Creek, who has actually successfully done this before. So Dave, just great having you here, man, and excited to get some time with you. But tell us a little bit about you and some of the things that you're working on right now.
Well, thanks for having me, man. It's good to be on here with you. We've had a fun time talking and getting to know each other a little bit. My family, I'm married to Rachel. I've got 4 kids. I'm originally from Cincinnati, home of Skyline Chili and La Rosa's Pizza, and but all of that, I think what you probably wanted to. I was at 242 Community Church for 15 years over in Michigan, and we launched a few community centers, some activated spaces over there, and now at Willow. And one of the opportunities, challenges that we have is just a whole lot of square footage under roof, and trying to figure out how do we activate that the most strategic way possible.
Yeah, that's great, and thanks for bringing up Willow. Just in our friendship, people obviously ask a lot of questions. How's Willow doing? And I've been so encouraged by the story, but a lot of people know where Willow was a couple years ago. Man, Dave, I would love for you to spend some time with us. Like, how are things going right now at Willow?
Sure. Yeah. Of course. I think. Well, I think I think there's wind in the sails. We had a staff person recently said, you know what? I think what's encouraging right now is that the problems that we're solving are future problems rather than past problems. And that was, certainly when we got here, there was a lot to deal with. And most of the problems we were solving were those, problems from the past. And now, we're talking through how do we, we're growing out of kids space in our South Barrington location. We've got a South Lake location that's trying to figure out how do we add a second service because we've grown. We've got a campus where the Hispanic population is exploding. And so what do we do to help with, overcoming language barriers and things like that? So I feel like, the tide has turned and things are going well. We've got, an incredible opportunity here in Chicagoland. We're a big, diverse city. And so, in the last couple of years, last year, we saw the largest increase in diversity in Willow's history, which is really cool. And we saw the largest increase in the millennial generation happened last year, which was really, really cool. So, we're growing more diverse, we're growing younger, we're bringing those demographics around our leadership tables too. And it's just creating a real rich experience. And then, I know probably a lot of ministry leaders are going to watch this and, they want to know how's the growth and, is that happening? And yeah, that's happening. Like we're seeing, we had record attendance since COVID last couple, about 2 weekends ago. But I would say this, we saw a record-breaking attendance. We came into our staff, our day of staff meetings where like all of our staff come together. And we saw, we celebrate wins at every meeting. And like I went throughout an entire day of meetings and everybody celebrating wins. And it wasn't until the last meeting that I kind of raised my hand a little bit and I said, hey, and there's also this win that we saw the largest attendance that we've had since we opened up. And I think there's kind of a win upon the win because I said, hey, you know what? And we've gone through an entire day and no one's mentioned that. And so like from a staff culture perspective, I think what was really cool is that, a staff that was kind of hyper focused on numbers and growth and that sort of thing to the detriment of health sometimes is now kind of focused on health and the growth is this byproduct, this awesome byproduct that's happening from that. And I just think it's pretty cool. So from a lot of perspectives, I think, we're getting bigger, but we're not just getting bigger. I'm watching something more beautiful happen, and it's really encouraging. So, sum it all up, I'd say it's a lot more fun now than it was a couple of years ago when I came. So thanks for asking the question.
Oh, it's just so great to hear. And to your point, yeah, the attendance is a lagging indicator to the great things that are happening there. And that I think I thought you were crazy a couple of years ago.
I probably was.
But just seeing what God's doing through you and your leadership, man, I'm just really pumped about that. So congratulations.
I appreciate that. And I got to say that God brought a lot of incredible team members from a lot of great churches around the country, a Mariners, a North Point, a Saddleback, a Central, a Southland, just a lot of great influx of talent and culture that have really come along and helped, and an existing staff here, like on the legacy staff that kind of hung in through really hard times, and like their contribution and help bringing continuity and lend trust and things like that has just been really great. I mean, I know you've said a number of times you're crazy to do that, but the truth is I was selfish to do it, because like I've gotten to have a front row seat to watching God just redeem and restore and heal, and it's been very, very rich.
Oh man, I love that story. That's so great. And so Dave, one of the things you and I share a passion about is these activated spaces, and the idea that the church spends millions and millions of dollars on these buildings that are in prime locations that typically only get used once a week. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is when you went to 242 and you incorporated this concept of building hubs, if you will, no one else was really doing that at the time. So I mean, what makes you passionate about that? What is the vision that you see for what churches could be doing with their spaces that you brought to 242 and now Willow?
Yeah. I don't know, probably a couple things. One is the stewardship of the idea, like you mentioned. I mean, we own, as a church, what do we own? $1 trillion of real estate in the U.S. And we use it like 5% of the time. So the stewardship of that just makes no sense. There's this unrealized opportunity there that it just doesn't make any sense. And then you think about the fact that like 50% or so of a lot of church budgets is going to pay for real estate and the maintenance of that real estate. And gosh, if there are ways that we could drive down that real estate percentage of our budget, that creates more pie in the budget to go toward church planting, to go toward, justice and compassion kind of ministries in your community, that go toward, global partnerships around the world. So there's a lot of ways that I think we can use our resources better. And it's totally possible. It's just kind of shifting our mindset a little bit. I saw a study that 84% of churches own their buildings. And for me, I've done a lot of work with some other churches and church planting. And I would bet that number is actually higher, that 84% own their buildings, but I bet another percentage of folks want to, because they're like church plants or they're small churches that just haven't been able to afford their building yet. So you have this incredible, mindset or desire from churches where we've got to control the real estate. And yet, when you look at businesses across the country, 12% of businesses own their spaces. And so what have they figured out? There's something there where they're saying, hey, you know what? Someone else can own the real estate. Someone else can have that hassle. We're going to rent, we're going to lease, or we're going to partner in strategic ways so that we can free up resources to be about our primary mission as a business. And I just think the church needs to figure that out. I think the other thing is probably, just this opportunity for our next generations, our younger generations, millennials, Gen Z. They care, like they're watching this stuff. And it's interesting because I'm Gen X, right? It's the generation that doesn't matter because there's not very many of us. So like there's the boomers, a lot of millennials. Everybody talks about them. We're just this bridge generation that nobody cared about. But anyway, I'm this bridge, right? So like when we walk through Willow for the first time with my family, my boomer dad is looking around at this 7,000 seat auditorium and, a million square feet of real estate here in our South Barrington campus. And he's just like impressed with the success of the whole thing. Like that's how he saw it through his lenses. My daughter, who's 21 at the time, she had only grown up in activated spaces, right? In community center type spaces at 242, our old church. And so she's walking through and she's kind of going, and all of this just sits empty all week, Dad? Like this, to her, and she was real positive about it, but she was just like, oh my gosh, like this is, what a horrible stewardship, right? And so there's just, I think, an opportunity for us, even as we think about growing younger and this next generation, to get this right. Okay, so stewardship. And then I think just the foot traffic, just the missional opportunities that come through activating your space beyond just a couple hours on Sunday morning is just phenomenal. So, like our church, 242, I think in 8 years, we grew to about 1,000 people in a school, which was awesome. And I loved it. And, that was tremendous. And then we open up this activated space, this community center, and we were the same church, right? Like I didn't preach any better. Our music was the same. Our culture was the same. And yet we grew by 1,000 people a year for the next 4 or 5 years. And then like launched other ones and things like that. So there's just this foot traffic thing that I think begins to happen. There's a lot, I think, that begins to happen. But I think the kind of the overarching concept is just this idea that throughout the week, in a very natural way, you're inviting the community in to utilize the space. And so, when a crisis rolls around in that person's life, or Easter rolls around in that person's life, and they kind of look at somebody in their family and go, hey, maybe we ought to give church a chance. Well, okay, well, what church should we try? They'd already been in our building for music lessons, or they'd already had soccer practice on the soccer field, or they'd already had lunch in the cafe. And so it's just this natural, deal. And so I think just the foot traffic and the interaction with your church, beyond your church people, beyond just the Sunday morning presentation, the worship experience, I think that's the incredible opportunity. So it's probably stewardship, and then the missional opportunity piece is huge.
Well, you touched on something I think is incredibly important, and it's the idea of getting people on site who would otherwise maybe not be there, but
Exactly.
What you've done and why they would choose Willow or 242 now is you've provided relevance and you've built trust without even knowing it, right? You've added value to their lives, their families' lives. And so when they think of coming to church, there's a familiarity, but you've also been a relevant entity to them. And of course, they're going to choose you.
Totally. I just got back from Jerusalem, and we went into Palestine, and I'm seeing mosques there, and I'm hearing the call to prayer and that sort of thing, and people that are dressed in different ways. And it just dawned on me, because I'm familiar with, this conversation, and I'm going, wow, what would it take for me, with my story and my experience, to actually cross the threshold and show up at that building and walk in, right? Because everything is just so foreign. It's so different. I've never had that experience. And I forget that there are thousands of people that are driving by our buildings every day that honestly probably have a similar experience. They're kind of going, I don't know what happens in there, or, it's not been a part of my story. And I don't know, what if I show up there and they start, sacrificing animals or something? I don't know what's going to happen. And so, I think this natural crossing the threshold and sharing space with your community creates opportunity.
Well, I do too. When parents drop their kids off and they see a vibrant space that's really built for their kids, and they see people who are smiling and they can grab a coffee and all these different things. You're also taking so much guesswork
Yep.
out of your heads, and they're not going to cross that dark wall. I mean, most of our churches don't really have necessarily a lot of natural light. They don't know what's behind those walls and those in that glass, but this gets them there and gives them that experience, right? That it just eliminates those barriers of entry they would otherwise have, and I love that. So you mentioned the community center. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of more of what exactly that community center was, what it accomplished for the community, how you utilized it for the community?
Sure. So we had a building that was in the middle of town, basically, and it was an old tennis and racquetball facility. Had 6 tennis courts. It had 13 racquetball courts. It was about 120,000 square feet, and it was sitting empty. It'd been abandoned for probably 4 or 5 years. The weeds are growing in the parking lot. Windows are busted out, that sort of thing. And I'd driven past it for a few years and just never thought much about it other than, gosh, that's kind of the ugliest building in our town. And one day, just, had the idea, well, what if we opened that back up and gave a community center to our community? What would that look like? And so I shared that vision with our staff and with our leaders, and that's kind of what got the ball rolling. We put a sign out front that said coming. We bought the building. We said, put a sign out front that said coming soon, you decide. And the paper picked it up, and it was just this idea that we're going to build a building. We're going to build a building for our community, and we want your ideas for what you want in the building that you will utilize. And it was a blast. I mean, people were texting in, emailing in all kinds of ideas about, there ought to be like youth programs. There ought to be sports facilities. The people that had been a part of the tennis club are like, let's bring tennis back. People that were saying, well, what about like, a theater that the local theater groups could use? I mean, it was just all kinds of ideas. One of my favorites was somebody wrote me this big long letter that said, I believe that roller derby would be something that would transform this community. And I'm reading this going, you're probably right. It probably would transform the community. I just don't know if that's really the direction we want the community transformed. I don't know. Apologies to any roller derby fans out there. But anyway, that was just kind of how we did it. And we just took the input from the community and then tried to design around that. And so, we had a 7-day-a-week sort of a counter service restaurant. It was, we had a playscape. We had a 3-story playscape. We had meeting rooms and things like that. So you had sort of a co-working element to the building. We had an indoor soccer field. We had a basketball kind of gym, volleyball, pickleball, that kind of thing. We had a climbing wall. We had sports and fitness. And so we had like a CrossFit gym in the space. We had a school for the arts, so child development, and one of our community centers had a preschool in there. So this whole idea of child development happening. The School for the Arts was amazing, by the way. It blew up in our community. That was really awesome. So and then just the space was just used all the time. I mean, we were the birthday party central. Like when you came on Saturdays, like it was just birthday party after birthday party. The community started using the building in amazing ways. We had in the winter, we were in Michigan, right? We had a remote control model airplane group that started renting the soccer field so they could fly their stuff inside. We had music groups using the place. It was really fun.
Dave, it's so incredible. And again, I think what impresses me is there wasn't a lot of proof of concept that you came up with, but the one thing to me that is just the most brilliant out of what you just said is the coming soon, you decide. That we do a lot of these projects. We talk about this all the time. And one of the biggest challenges, I would say mistakes churches make in this process is we design a space for us, and then we ask the community if they want to use it.
Right.
And really the way that this works is you start with what the community needs, and you integrate your needs into it. And so just the other thing that does is it just involves the community in a way that they feel like they're a part of what you're doing, right? This building is for us. It's not your building that you're trying to get us to come to. This building was built for us. What an absolute great move. So yeah, I applaud you on that. What are some things that you would say you have learned? Hey, this really worked for us. Here's some things that we might do differently going forward. What are some kind of big takeaways that you would want to share with the leaders who are watching this?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think things we stumbled into, I think things that we learned like by looking backwards and sort of forensically going, where did we get it right? Where did we get it wrong? We did this a couple different places. We did it in Ann Arbor. We did it in Brighton. We adopted a church, and then a building that was formerly a bowling alley, and we kept 6 of the bowling lanes. And I mean, just and then I got to be a part of a church extension fund where we would work with churches and, loan money to churches who were building buildings. And as the word got out about 242, other churches that were trying to do this as well. So just trying to, learn from their experience and that sort of thing. I'll give you a couple things. One is the building really, if you do it right, I think the building has the potential to really disciple your people and create culture for the people in your church. So, when your people on a Sunday morning, on an Easter Sunday morning, everybody's dressed up or whatever, when they're walking through a soccer field to get to the auditorium on Sunday morning, it says something to the people of your church. It is a constant reminder of what we're about, that we are an externally focused culture. And that's really, really important. The building becomes this sort of tool for your folks. We went to all of the small groups in our church and we said, okay, we're getting ready to open in this facility. I'd like to challenge each of our small groups to come up with one event or club or something that they're going to do in the next year to reach your friends for Jesus. And so so many things emerge from that. So this idea of mobilizing your people to really own the ministry of the church, and the building just becomes the thing that literally facilitates that happening. So we had, obviously tons of play groups where parents would get together and they'd have food and kids would go on the playscape, or, they might have a Bible study or that sort of thing. We had flag football. I mean, we had hundreds of guys that were getting together doing flag football. We saw Bible studies come out of that, small groups form out of that. And the beauty is, my church, we did not fund it. We did not publicize it. We did not lead it. We didn't do it. We just created the tool and then sort of cast a vision for missional imagination, right? And our people just took that and ran. One of my favorites was we had a lady, or no, it was a lady that said, I cut hair for a living. What should I do? And she just decided, you know what? I want to cut hair for people with special needs. And I'll just cook a meal, and anybody that wants to can come to the church, and I'll set up my chair and I'll cut hair for them for free. And then we'll have a meal together. And, fast forward 8-10 months, that thing starts to grow like crazy. And I mean, you would have thought walking into our church that we have a ministry of haircutting and food and community and families helping families. And, I'll watch your kid while you watch ours, and let's support each other and all this kind of stuff. And it's our church didn't do anything except create the space that facilitated that. So there's just a lot that gets released, I think, from a missional imagination in your people if you create the space for it. So I think that's huge. Benefits to the community starts to catch on so that senior living groups start using the space. We had Big Brothers started doing an indoor camp out where they would come and they'd be on our soccer field, and they would literally put tents on the soccer field. And then we had this big old LED screen at the end of the room, and so they would have movie nights while they're camping out together. It was just super cool stuff that begins to happen. I don't know, what did we learn? I think what you highlighted, that you got to listen to the community first. I think that's big. Like, don't build for your church. Don't build what you think the community needs. Listen to the community. That's huge. I would say, like, don't get caught up as church leadership in the facility vision so much that you're neglecting the ministry work of your church. And I've seen that happen, where these pastors who are trained as pastors begin to become developers, or and this is one I learned by doing it wrong, because I was, the senior pastor of the church. I'd be working on my message one half of the day, and then designing the kitchen in the restaurant, like literally sitting down and designing the kitchen. What do I know about that? I know nothing about that, right? And so what would it look like for me to, here's one, like, don't do it alone. Partner with operators, partner with developers, partner with people that know what they're doing, rather than try and reinvent the wheel. I remember reading through corporate structure, tax law stuff, trying to wrap my mind around preschool regulations, because we felt like we had to own all of the missional businesses or the impact businesses in our facility. And it's like, no, I don't need to do that. There's great operators out there. There's great people out there, that can help figure that stuff out. I think location is huge. The old church, the church deal where they go out on the edge of town because the land is the cheapest out there, and you build the church with all the cornfields around it, and you wait for the town to sort of develop and grow out to you. I don't know that that's best. I love the idea of being located right in the heart of what's going on. And you go, well, goodness, well, that's where the land isn't the cheapest. Yeah, but if you're partnering with operators, or you're figuring out how to activate your space, there's the stewardship aspect of that you can begin to afford the land and things like that. We've got a campus in the heart of Chicago right now at Willow, and we're literally talking about developing the air rights above that. We're going to put a residential high-rise above the church building. We may come out of that with no debt, and actually it be, a really financially a revenue generator for us. So I think location is really important. I think through the strategic branding of things, how religious do your spaces look? How strategic is your the language that you use? And then, I think I said it, like, get help. You don't need to be trying to figure out corporate structure, tax law on your own.
No, Dave, it's so good. And what you're touching on, I think, is an incredibly important thing. I think this is a thing that gets in the way of churches executing on this well, is there's a difference between a strategic opportunity and a non-strategic distraction. And when you try to own, operate, and become something outside of your core competency, that's how it becomes a non-strategic distraction. All of a sudden now I got to learn how to run a school. I got to learn how to run a childcare center. I have to learn how to do these things. Versus, I'm a big fan of mailbox money. Someone who actually knows how to do that, using your space while you're not, and sending you a check for it. Like, that to me, puts more money into the church, less stress of the facilities budget, as you explained, and you're not having to learn a new business.
Yeah. And I can say, because I can just hear all of the pastors, kind of the questions that are coming up, the hands are raising, and they're like, well, okay, hold on a second. What if you have somebody that wants to rent the space for a Jewish bar mitzvah? Like, is that okay? What if you have a preschool that wants to come in, and they said they were a Christian preschool, but all they want to use is the King James version, and you're going to hell if you use anything else. And how do you navigate those things? Or what do you do when you have church program that is competing for time, competing for space with community center type programming? Like, how do you resolve those things? And I would just say, like, there are people that are working through those things, and the opportunities far outweigh the hassles and the headaches. I talked about getting help from developers, getting help from, operators of impact businesses. I think you also get help from ministry leaders who have done some of these things.
Yes.
To help, kind of walk through, what does the culture of your church need to look like? What does the structure of your staff need to look like? How do you make sure that you are capitalizing on this opportunity, and not just, honestly, I know, and the mailbox money, which by the way is a brilliant term. I love that. That's really great. But the missional opportunity that is on the table there, I would hate to see, a pastor or a church, just go after the money piece of it. Oh, we help, pay the mortgage, and miss out on this incredible opportunity to literally activate your space 7 days a week for the mission of Jesus. It's incredible.
It is, and you're touching on another fun subject, and we tell churches this all the time. In this conversation, there's a pendulum between mission and monetization.
There you go.
And the answer is typically somewhere, I wouldn't say in the middle. The other thing is too, I don't want to say that monetization isn't missional, right? I mean, there are churches that launch campuses that pay for themselves day one.
Absolutely.
In models like this, and free up money for ministry. So I think it's not about being prescriptive and saying, hey, here's the thing you have to do. You have to do a community center. You have to do childcare. It's asking the question of what the community needs, providing that need, and people will pay you for that. And that is the beauty of being both missional and monetized. Yeah. So Dave, I had a chance. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I give you one more thing. And I'm watching this emerge too, is, a lot of times in church work, we're trying to help mobilize people for, mission. And you'll get these business owners, or you'll get, high capacity folks, or that sort of thing. I'm watching an opportunity to see if you agree with this, for impact investment as well, where people are going, you know what, I've got my portfolio out here. What if I'm taking some of my capital and I'm helping to invest and develop this kind of thing? Like, not only am I going to give $100,000, I'm going to donate $100,000 or whatever to my church to help build the church. I might also invest some money in this project, right? In the local development of that building. I think there's a lot of interest in that kind of investment as well.
Well, as you know, Dave, that's the world I come from, the private equity, private placement type of world. And you are correct. And there's also, yeah, you did. And it's been a conversation we've had a lot recently, because it's a gap funding mechanism, right? So if a church has a $20 million opportunity and can only fill $15 million of that, but it is a fully monetized site, there is an opportunity for an investor to take that $5 million gap, earn an 8 to 10% interest rate return on that money over time. Yep. And then once the project is developed, the church has an opportunity to buy out that equity at, a 5-year point, right? So, you're dead on. And if anyone's listening, there are a lot of people interested in that idea, because it both serves the church, and it provides the impact to the community. So
win-win.
So I had a chance to be up in Chicago with you recently. Got to tour some of those massive buildings with you, and you have been just doing an amazing job leading Willow through triage. But I know that you also have a big vision of what those spaces could do in the different communities. Can you kind of just, if you don't mind, would you kind of share some of the big thoughts that you have for what might be in Chicago?
Yeah. I mean, we're just getting started. What we have recently identified a couple of staff people and said, hey, like this is your, you own this. So that you're the missional spaces director, or that kind of thing. And so I think we're seeing some good momentum and some good vision. I think I mentioned our Chicago campus. I think there'll be an opportunity there. We're not too far down the road yet, but I think there'll be an opportunity there for developing that high rise, which just I think that's really innovative. I think people are excited about that. I think at our South Barrington campus, if you've been here for the summit or you've come to visit, it's a pretty foreboding sort of corporate campus. We're going to try to soften that up a little bit. Literally, we have a lake out here. We have a moat. It's intimidating to come across the moat to get to the big building. But, what if the moat were a place that had paddle boats or something? I don't know. But people are starting to dream about how do we take, what is, I think it's like 900,000 square feet that we've got here, and begin to say, what does preschool, what does co-working, what does food service throughout the week, what are the opportunities that we can utilize here and sort of reinvent this space, which is exciting. And then we've got a couple of campuses. We've got one in Crystal Lake that is right downtown. They're right in the sort of the city center, and they've got development happening all around them. I could see some residential there. I could see maybe some senior facility maybe there. And then our Huntley campus, we got 65 acres at our Huntley campus. And so just some real opportunities there for maybe some outside development, as well as some of the indoor stuff that we've talked about. So I think we've got, a unique challenge in that there's so many different types of campuses here, but also just an opportunity to get really creative and figure out what would best serve the community.
That is awesome. Well, Dave, first of all, thank you so much for spending the time here today. And leaders, if you're listening to this and this is interesting to you in any way, and you're looking at your space and wondering what could be and how do we get more people here, what we'd like to offer to you is a chance to connect with Dave and me for conversation. There's nothing more than that. We'd love the chance to learn more about your church, what God's put on your heart, what you're dreaming, and share some of our experiences on how you might be able to move forward. And if that is of interest to you, please feel free to complete the short form that's just under this video, and we'll be in touch with you as soon as possible. So again, Dave, appreciate you so much. The work you're doing at Willow is just absolutely incredible, and your experience and expertise in this area, man, it's just, I admire it a lot. So thank you.
You're very kind. I appreciate that. To God be the glory, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good talking with you.
You got it. Thank you.